sometimes you have to wait for someone to die to move up. Well, at Accenture, the more you sell, the bigger you grew, and there was no set number of partners. So it was just a growth mentality.
There it is. Whoa, boy. Hey, yeah, I thought it started recording. It didn't start recording. Then I took a deep breath. Now I got to let it out. And now I'm going to say, guess what? Welcome to 10X Your Team with Cam Otis. We're a father-son leadership podcast where we talk with other lifelong learners about making an impact and solving big problems. And, you know, when you live at 7,000 feet, even if you live here and you take a deep breath, out of time, out of sequence, you know, I used to do scuba training here, practice holding my breath underwater and things like that, and run holding my breath. I can vouch that there is less oxygen at 7,000 feet than where I grew up in Fort Worth. Mm-hmm. Cam, do you notice that?
You know, we got more oxygen down here, but we got way more crap floating around the air. We got all the dust and stuff. You know, it's a desert, so I think it balances about right out.
So what we're all saying is we would love to join you, Brad, if you got space for us. Our guest today, Brad down in Texas. This is about the best time to be down in Texas, ain't it?
That's right.
Yeah, it is a gorgeous time of year down there. I do miss the late fall weather in Texas. Man,
it's really my favorite time.
Yeah, because it's still hot and dry and full of dust in Tucson. And
actually, I gotta say, today might be the first day we're cooling down. It's supposed to be only 73 today.
Wow,
it's supposed to hold actually. So we'll see. Fall might be here.
Do I need to overnight you a big puffy coat?
Yes, sir.
So, Brad, man, I've been wondering. I always, and it's probably because certain things don't fascinate me, but when they fascinate somebody else, I'm like, why? And really, the IT, CIO folks, your business, and I'll circle back around to this question too, because I find this fascinating, is what's the threshold for a CIO? But how did you get into the IT world? Because, you know, folks, when you look at us on YouTube, I didn't say the YouTube this time. I said
there you
YouTube.
Go, Dad.
That's right. See, I am learning. When you look at us on YouTube, you can see that Brad and I are probably about the same generation. So we aren't the typical IT guys. So how did you get into that world and accelerate above everybody else?
Well, I was going to graduate school part-time at the University of Texas at Austin and working full-time for the federal government, and I was the payroll officer. And we decided to move from punch cards to online data entry, very cutting edge. And so I would meet with this programmer once a week, and he had a white shirt with short sleeves, a black skinny tie, a plastic pencil protector, and big, thick glasses. Black, of course. And I told the guy, I said, what I want to do is have the screen just default to 8s every day for 2 weeks. So if someone has perfect attendance, you just hit enter and go to the next one. I don't want them typing 8 6,000 times, per employee, 6,000 employees. And he said, no, I can't do it. And he scurried off. And about a week later, he scurries back and go, I can do it. So he was taught to say no to anything I asked for, go check with the boss, and if the boss was okay, come back and then agree to do it. And I realized if I don't learn some technical skills, I'll be held hostage to a guy like that for my entire career.
Oh.
And so,
Yeah.
so
Think of the mental state. I mean, I could hear the mental state even now after all
yeah,
these years. It's
it's only
still
been
in your head.
40 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Where he's like, no. And you're
And
like,
so I did some research and I found that Arthur Anderson, which became Anderson Consulting, which became Accenture, had a 3-year training program for people like me with a liberal arts undergraduate degree and a graduate degree in public policy. And they would teach me how to code, teach me how to design programs, teach me how to manage coders and designers. And after 22 years, I was managing $100 million projects with 220 people. But it was just one step at a time. And my game plan was to go into private sector, get the skills, and come back to government, which is exactly what I did. But it took me 27 years to do it.
you picked up a lot of skills in 27 years.
That's right. My practice area was actually higher ed. So my clients were The Ohio State University, Michigan, Illinois, Cal State, Columbia, Vanderbilt, even Texas A&M, believe it or not.
Gig 'em.
And so a couple years after I retired from the firm, I got a call from my alma mater. They needed an IT strategy, and they wanted someone from outside the university who knows higher ed. Well, that was me. So I signed up for an hour a week pro bono. They were too cheap to pay for my dry cleaning or my parking. And
I could see that from the university.
I had a roll of quarters.
A parking pass, right?
I had a roll of quarters feeding the meter. And, the most important thing in higher ed is parking and space. So that's
That's right.
So this was in October. By March, I was half-time. By June, I was full-time. And they asked me to become the chief information officer, and I served for 7 years. 8 altogether, but 7 as the CIO.
Could you talk some about what was it that hooked you all the way into IT? Because you talking about like the problem solving aspect, I could see that then being a short term route where it's like, hey, I'm going to learn this, I'm going to figure out how to solve these problems. All right, now I'm going to go over here and figure out how to solve these problems. So you can kind of keep just piling on your own skill set. Why'd you decide to do the deep dive?
Well, I did some research for my master's report, and I looked at the IT consulting industry. And this was 1984. And all the indicators were it was going to go skyrocket in terms of growth. So I wanted to be in a growth industry. And it just dawned on me that big organizations cannot transform without IT. And so I wanted to be part of that.
Sorry, I thought you had one there, Deb. I saw you taking another one of them deep, high altitude breaths, but that's all right. Brad, with that, then, what was it? Because I always think that's an interesting piece. You say everything's kind of pointing towards that upward slope. I'm younger, not in the same generation as y'all. That being said, I've lived through in the past 10, 15 years a bunch of things that people talk about it going all up like this, and it seems to be more like that. Could you talk some about, how you really, I don't know, either did the research or was it just a bet of hey, this really seems like it's working, let's go all in on it?
It was primarily the research. And when I joined the firm, there were 40,000 consultants. Accenture now has 700,000 people. So that's the kind of growth over 40 years. It's just unbelievable. But yeah, I did the research.
So I'm going to guess there's a leadership need in this. Okay, there we go. Sorry. The distraction, why there was a big breath was my mouse quit working and then it screens and yes, because we do this live, but we don't do it live, but yeah, it's live enough. Where did the leadership and I think this is a broader question because the label of IT folks are the just leave me alone, head down. I just want to.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say, he already described the guy that we're all picturing. I think we're all on the same page.
Well, and what's funny is there's this great picture of my dad. I'm pretty sure it's in front of the mechanical engineering sign or School of Engineering sign at LSU when he was getting his master's degree. But he is wearing exactly what you said.
Well, I told the story one time, and a woman goes, "I married that guy."
Yeah, that would be my mom. Because yes, he is. He's got a load of books under one arm, skinny black tie, white shirt, pocket protector with a couple of pins, and I can remember him going off to work with a slide rule in that pocket protector too.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but it's pretty obvious that you broke out of that shell if you were ever in it. Let's talk about that leadership aspect that in that. I want to say industry, but it's broader than industry. I think it's the typical IT guy. We can make fun of Elon Musk too. Kind of that autism that is like, oh, just don't talk to me. But then he gets up and does stuff too. Talk to us a little bit about that leadership aspect in that realm.
Well, before I get there, I do want to say that I enjoyed coding because I did not have to talk to anyone. No humans were involved. I could just be blissfully listening to music and in my own world. And unlike management, where, people are the hard part. So over time, though, I got opportunities to manage people. And I had some programmers say, "Oh, Brad, you don't get it. This is C++. I said, "No, I get it. It's a programming language." and just getting, I guess the firm did a great job of giving us field promotions. So I was doing a project as a manager when I was a senior consultant. I was assigned to be an associate partner role when I was a senior manager. I was assigned to do a partner role when I was an associate partner. So it was a really safe way to see if you could fit in that new role and prove to yourself that you could do it and prove to your manager that you could do it. So the whole philosophy of field promotions, I thought was really good. I actually went through 22 years of annual reviews and looked at how they guided me. First to get the technical skills and then to get the management skills and then the leadership skills. And I talked to the partner who hired me and I said, "You guys did a great job." They got me to partner.
Yeah.
Could you?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, this is a silly question for me. I'm guessing this is one of those as a only entrepreneur never working in a big company. What the heck is a field promotion? I'm guessing it's just a little bit of on the fly, like, "Hey, you're doing a good job, let's send you up" type of thing.
Yeah, it's giving you the opportunity to be in a role before you're officially in the role.
So, and the cynical definition of that is, I'm going to promote you and give you all the responsibility, but I'm not going to pay you yet.
It was cost effective.
Yes, very cost effective.
Could you talk some about, just from your own perspective of how that kind of an environment, you're talking about the annual reviews, the field promotions, that stuff, how that got you bought in to kind of continue to work and see that path forward? And, not, Dad, you're asking the leadership question, I guess more of the follower question inside of that leadership.
Yeah, the firm had a culture of valuing training. So every year you either were going to class or teaching a class, and that attracted me. The other value was mentorship. From day one, you had a mentor, and as you grew in your career, you became a mentee and a mentor. And I always enjoyed that because usually it was someone not in your direct chain of command. So it was good environment for people to just ask questions and learn, and me to help them. And so I really enjoyed that. My last year, 3 months before I retired, I taught a class in our global training center outside of Chicago. There were 200 people in class from all around the world. We were teaching project management with a bunch of other partners, and it was just a joy. It was just so much fun to share, the journey of how do you become a really good project manager.
I'd love to dissect that a little bit because so many companies, first off, don't do anything like that. And
Mm-hmm.
then secondly, play lip service to it. And, yes, I have a mentor. Okay. How often do you talk to him? During my annual review.
Yeah, that's not it. That's not
That's
good
not,
enough.
how did it make Accenture is a massive corporation.
Yep.
And what was some of the keys that enabled them to uphold that? I'll call it a policy of
Yeah.
truly mentoring.
Well, the driving force was that if you grow the pie bigger and make more partners, everybody makes more money. The firm makes more money, the partners make more money. And, the goal was for them to groom me to be a partner so I could create wealth and help others do that. So it was really unlike a bank. A bank has a certain number of boxes on the org chart. Sometimes you have to wait for someone to die to move up.
Yeah.
Well, at Accenture, the more you sell, the bigger you grew, and there was no set number of partners. So it was just a growth mentality.
With that growth mentality, it reminds me of a story. And Dad, help me out. This, I think it would have been earlier this year, I think, but it was the story around basically the Ivy League school MBAs coming out and how they would do well, kind of by some financial metrics, but essentially what they were doing, the thesis of the essay on it was essentially the idea that they were getting a bigger slice of the pie, but they weren't actually growing the pie. Could you talk some, Brad, about the difference in mentality there of, basically they were cutting costs and saying, look how much better we're doing rather than actually growing the business. Could you talk some about that?
Yeah, that's a false. That's a false prophet. That's why some big companies that used to be icons in America are in trouble now because they worried more about quarterly financials than actually doing world-class engineering. So, I think what's it's the leadership has to drive the values, and the good news is those are visible. Any big company or public organization or university, they have a mission. They know what their purpose is. They have a vision of where they're going, and more than more than not, list the values that they have. So, you can find organizations that have those mission, vision, and values. You know where they're headed, and if you align with that, then you're in a good place.
What was the difference? Because, and this, I'm making the assumption that working at a university, the finances, the control is probably a little bit more like working in the federal government as opposed to
Mm-hmm.
commercial business. How was that adjustment in how you handled your role and responsibility?
Great question. Higher ed moves in slow and mysterious ways, so it takes a little while to kind of get used to that. I was at Ohio State managing a big transformation project for a couple of years. That really prepared me for being a CIO at a very, very large organization because both University of Texas at Austin and Ohio State are similar size, and just knowing how to navigate that. Um, my first year, as we developed the strategy, we found opportunities to free up some funding because the management was top heavy. And so we removed a layer of management, and that freed up $1 million a year. Um, and the management wasn't actually getting along with each other. They were kind of whipsawing their teams. So it actually made us a little more streamlined. And that became part of our capital budget. So sometimes you have to make make things happen. We had a 5-year strategy, and my philosophy was I'm going to run down the field as fast as I can. And if no one tackles me, then I'll be further down the field. And no one tackled us. We just took on some big changes, and it was just success after success. Not that it was easy. In higher ed, 1 to 99 is a tie. So if there's one person in the back, oh, I want to do X, Y, Z, it's not like command and control. And go ahead.
Well, I was just going to ask that's some interesting autonomy. Was that just the culture that you were in, or did you just say, screw the culture, I'm in, this is the way I do it, stop me if you dare?
Well, a lot of campuses had hired Accenture to help them change. They couldn't do it themselves. They tried to do it themselves, but they really needed people who knew how to make those changes. And it was the learnings in several different campuses. In some way, they're different, but a lot of ways they're alike. I used to say a big university is like medieval Europe. You have all these kingdoms, and you're the central IT guy, so they're pouring bubbling oil on you to keep you away. But what I wanted to do is kind of change the culture from a fire drill, heroic swoop in, oh, I'm going to save the day, and not reward that type of behavior, but reward proactive, customer-focused behavior. And it took about 1.5 years, but we finally kind of stopped being fire drilling and started being more proactively planning and tried to avoid some of these problems, and then just practice what to do when you didn't, he had an unanticipated problem. I have 54,000 students, 4,000 faculty, 21,000 staff. What could possibly go wrong?
The law of variables comes in there, doesn't it?
250,000 devices hooked to the network every day. So,
wow.
but the key was to get out of the office and go meet with people. And a professor who I had worked with 15 years prior on a statewide network project, a successful project, I said, okay, give me some advice. He goes, get out of the office and tell people you give a damn. That was the best advice ever. So I made a point every 4 to 6 weeks to get out of the office and go meet with my peers in the university, the VP for public safety. Well, why would I do that? Because it's not if there would be a problem, but when there's a problem and how we deal with it. And the emergency management centers, we had 3, all had IT backbones. They had copper wire because the network might go out. So I worked very closely with that peer to make sure we were proactively ready for 100,000 people in the football stadium, commencement. We had a bomb scare, we had a shooting, but to be proactively anticipating was important. Once a year, we would practice, okay, what if we had an ice storm? What would happen? What if we had a cybersecurity incident? What if the power went out? So we generate our own power, but it actually went out for the first time in 20 years. Well, we were ready for it. Data center kept running. So, and then my other peers, a woman who's vice provost wanted to change the teaching and learning from lectures to let's record the lectures and have more discussion in the classroom. Well, our learning management system, which has all the things you would have in a class, was buggy. It was on 8 to 10-year-old servers that were slow. The students said it's clunky. That was their favorite word. And my tech guy was kind of erratic, and the vendor's tech guy was erratic. So it was just like we replaced it. And it was actually the faculty and students who evaluated the different products and picked a product that actually was not in our data center, but in the cloud. and it was modern. It looked like Gmail, easy to use, great interface. Um, it took 2 years to transition, but because the selection was so good and popular, there was kind of a pull to the new system, and people were ready to let the old one go. And in March 2022, after I retired again, my successor was able to increase VPN, increase Zoom, and 70,000 people went live to do teaching, research, work. Unbelievable. But we moved as much as we could to the cloud, but it was those people affected selecting the product that helped get the buy-in to make the change.
Could you talk some about shifting that perspective from a leadership standpoint of going away from the, putting out the fires, kind of rewarding that kind of behavior to rewarding the proactive behavior? Because I think that's one of those things that concept-wise, I think a lot of people get it. And then it's like, okay, well, how do I actually go about that? We don't realize in all the ways that we reward the people putting out the fires and the ways that we might even punish the people that are being proactive with stuff. Could you talk some about, some of your strategies with that?
Well, when we created the IT strategy, we talked to 400 people on campus. And we talked to undergraduates, graduate students, faculty, staff. And themes came out of what they wanted from the central IT group. And number one was truthfulness. They wanted proactive IT service. They wanted consistency. They wanted better communication and collaboration. They wanted to work with us. That feedback became the values of the organization. And we actually added one more on top as the number one priority, which was family first. Well, why would I do that? Because I'm in Austin, Texas, competing with large multinational IT organizations. I can't compete on salary. Same with the startups. But I can promise a solid 8-hour workday and then leave. And I would, all the new employees went through orientation. No one could skip it because they're too busy. So they would listen to what the values of the organization are, meet up the management team, all my direct reports, and then I would reinforce the messages, the values, through quarterly meetings, which were either usually hybrid because I had people who couldn't leave their workspace or they're at home. I had a weekly blog that I would talk about things that are coming. I would kudos that came in for staff because people like good service. They'll let you know. And with those, the blog just reinforcing those what's expected, and then me walking the walk. So I would not respond to email at all hours of the day. I told them I didn't want them to do that. I would go to the doctor if I needed to. I would go to the school play if I needed to. We had 330 people in central IT. We can back you up. And I had one network engineer, went to a startup, and I said, look, I don't say this to everybody, but if you don't like it, you can come back. Well, the guy left, and 2 weeks later he calls. He goes, this place is a zoo. They feed me because they never let me go home. They do my dry cleaning because I never get to go home. I thought this was best for my family, but I don't see my family. Can I come back? I said, you absolutely can come back. And he's still there 15 years later.
I love that. I was just going to jump in there before you go, Dad. I love the connection, talking about proactive problem solving and then bringing in that family component. Because that's one example of it. But that is really the when you're looking at your team, if you just put them to work and you're just cracking that whip and putting them in there, then that might not create a problem now, but eventually that burnout is going to be that fire that we were talking about earlier, right? That you're going to have to go run and put out. And so you are really putting your money where your mouth is and saying, no, go spend your time with your family, go do these different things, because we know that in the long run, that's going to help to solve those problems proactively in their own lives rather than just in the business.
So just as I met with about 10 peers across campus every 4 to 6 weeks, I asked my direct reports to do the same. So they go meet with your peers. And this one woman working for me, I said, I'd like you to go meet with the IT manager in XYZ department. She goes, why? They hate us. And I said, well, I'd rather have them in the tent than outside the tent throwing rocks at us. So, and there was some bad behavior before. So she went out and met with this woman. And each month, as we got better, more consistent, more predictable, more transparent, the relationship changed. And that person throwing rocks became an advocate. Mm-hmm. And her boss, who also didn't trust us, became an advocate. So we had like this network, it's like a nervous system through the campus that you could, get feedback, how are we doing? One of my peers called and had a rumor. Rumor was we didn't have enough diesel in the generators for the data center. I said, well, that's a darn good rumor. I'll go check. And checked with my data center guy. He goes, well, the generators run on natural gas. Good rumor, but it's not true. But how wonderful to get that, because that could have spread, like wildfire. And I was able to call the peer back, say, good rumor, it ain't true. And he doused it immediately. So that was the end of it.
I love that. The infamous generator is going to run out of diesel. Oh, my God. Because the storms are coming in the springtime. We're going to natural gas. Oh, yeah, that must have been. You must have had a little grin on your face on that one, calling them up and saying, "Hey."
I was just glad it wasn't a problem.
Yeah, I mean that's what I mean. That satisfaction of, whoo, thank God. That was an easy fix, right?
Yeah.
So, I'd love to hear and this kind of goes back to the question I asked earlier about the autonomy and the just go forward action, because at that upper level as a CIO, C-suite level, what I've seen in my interactions with some other CIOs over the years is they're kind of the outside looking in, and it's probably a little bit of personality knowing those guys. But you were able to get a lot done. How did you create that that influence? We'll call it influence or balanced struggle, because the pot of money is still a finite pot of money. And talk to us a little bit about that upper level structure and relationships that you had to overcome.
So when we talked to campus, we talked to all the deans and all the associate deans as well. And there was frustration that no one knew how decisions were being made in IT, who made them, why they made them, no transparency, and things would just happen to them. And it was very frustrating. So our first recommendation in the strategy was to establish governance. We had 11 committees doing some sort of IT governance, but none of them connected to each other. And only one had minutes and agendas. So a lot of lip flapping going on.
Oh, wow. A lot of importance building. Everybody wasn't very important because they were on those committees.
So we found a textbook that I knew from Accenture called IT governance. It's out of Harvard Business School. And basically there are three types of governance in IT. Operational. So in a university, that's teaching and learning, or the administrative side. There's technical, and there's strategic. Well, we had none of those. So we actually blew up governance and rebuilt it. So we had students and faculty deciding what tools would be used in the classroom. We had the technical staff choosing technical products that would be used across the university, like encryption. And strategic committee was made up of the president, the provost, the CFO, and 3 deans: big school, middle-sized school, small school. And the deans would rotate on and off every other year. And we would bring our priorities for the year to them and say, here's what we're planning to do. Do you agree? And it would be like, move to a new learning management system. The president said, well, what do the faculty and students think? Well, they evaluated the products, they selected the products, and they unanimously are recommending we move forward. The president goes, well, let's do it. So it was, to your question, is building relationships. We only met quarterly with the senior leadership, but we said, here's what we're going to do in the beginning of the year. And then each quarter, we would ground them in what's been achieved and what's coming. And I think the key for us moving forward was the support from that leadership team. And once you lose that, then you're in trouble.
Talking about getting that support, one of the things that comes to mind is the knowledge gap that I think kind of naturally is going to persist itself, especially in a department like IT, where there's so much depth there that you understand, that then trying to sell people on these ideas, it's a little bit of that balance of, it's like, okay, I have to explain enough to where you understand why this is so important, but if I get into the weeds, then they're just gonna, their eyes are just gonna gloss over. What are your process, or what's your thoughts rather, on how to kind of manage that knowledge gap?
A lot of what you're doing is translation. You're trying to take complicated things and just make them simple to understand. And that's something that in all the campuses I worked at, no one wants to be covered with technical jargon. They want to know what's the problem you're trying to solve. So here's an example. We had, this was my first year, 12,000 laptops. Every year, 1,000 go missing, lost, and stolen. Well, they were not all encrypted. So this is 2009. So it's, before people were much more cognizant than they used to be. And so the technical leaders picked the software we would encrypt. And then I took that to the strategic committee. And one of the deans was being critical, we don't want to slow down the researchers and whatever. The president steps in and goes, well, do you have your password on your iPhone? And the dean goes, no. He goes, it's 4 numbers. You need to put your password on there because it'll encrypt your phone. And then he goes, Brad, this is actually not an IT policy discussion. This is a compliance issue. I'm moving this topic to the compliance committee. Oh, okay. Well, Dean's on that too. So, the exposure was too great. So, of course, they voted 100% encryption and, a certain amount of time to do the encryption. The technical guys had some problems with the Apple version, and they started complaining like it was Central IT screwed up again. And then they said, hey, wait a minute, we're the ones who picked the software. So just getting people involved. But it got down to the last 52 faculty members who didn't want to do the encryption. I think we had their pictures on a deck of cards. And it's the same 52 who took whiteboards out of the classroom and put the chalkboards back up.
Yep.
And the president said, turn them off the network, or at least threatened to turn them off the network. A month later, 100% encryption.
Wow.
So I think it's just making it translating technical stuff into what is the business problem and how are we going to solve it.
And that's such a powerful thing. And then you shifted out of that big, I mean, literally you grew up in big corporate, then you went to giant academia, and
Yep.
now it's just Brad. Well, we all know you have a team around you, but
Right.
in the end, it's just you. How's that shift been going on in your head?
Well, when I took the pro bono role, and 6 months later, I'm managing the central IT group. My wife goes, "I knew you'd do that." It's like guys are stupid. Next time I do something like that, let me know. But as she said, she felt like I was born to do the job. It's like all those 22 years at Accenture working in higher ed was to put me there to move them from on-premise old technology into as many of the IT services we could move to the cloud. We did, and which saved our bacon during the pandemic. So I think it was just all that preparation for Accenture just prepared me to um, build a team and change the culture. And I'd say my biggest challenge has been that culture change. That was hard.
Yeah.
The first year was just very difficult.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, anytime you're attacking a culture is, I mean, even when it's recognized as bad, it's still,
Mm.
yeah.
Well, I had a guy who he wouldn't answer his phone, so he's tech support. The service goes down, and he won't answer his phone. It's like he didn't want to, he didn't like answering the phone. So of course we wrote a little memo. Next time you don't answer your phone, you'll be working somewhere else. And he finally just self-ejected because he just didn't want to do it.
Yeah. I would love for you to share a little bit of advice in the CIO necessity of small businesses as they grow up. Because with Try and Purpose, we talk about fractional COOs. And I've even had people talk to me about fractional CEOs, which I thought was really surprising. But that is out there also. So when does that CIO role start to become important for a business as it grows?
Um, I had an opportunity after I left the university to help a small business. And I got a call on my cell phone Friday afternoon. I never answer my phone. I answer
Oh,
it.
so you were that guy that didn't answer the phone. That's what you're saying?
Yeah. Yeah. And depends who's calling. And so I answered it, and it's a woman who uh, her brother and she own a regional liquor store in Texas, and their dad started it 80 years ago. They went from one store to 40 stores. Well, now they had 100 stores, but their IT was at 35 stores. So they asked me to come help them. And so I said, sure, I'll help you create a strategy for IT. And we met with the wholesale customers like restaurants and hotels and stuff, the retail customers who just loved the company. That's because the woman, Margaret, the sister, had a retail background, and she is known as the woman who took the bars off the windows of the liquor stores because she wanted women to feel comfortable coming into a liquor store and buying something. And she would have classes to teach people, wine tastings and things. And they also had programs to teach their employees. So people love going to the stores because they care about them. Remember, that's one of my principles. Understand people's goals and aspirations, set and manage expectations, and genuinely care about their success. Well, you walk into one of their stores, they genuinely care about their success. my local store manager, I had bought some wine. It was delicious. It was very reasonably priced. And I went back to get more. It was sold out. So he goes, well, give me your phone number and I'll order some more from California. 9 months go by and Chip calls. I forgot all about it. He goes, your wine's here. It's like, so I told that story to the owners and they said, well, Brad, here's the background. A major label in California overproduced. They didn't want to cannibalize their label. That was a $150 bottle of wine in a $19 bottle.
No wonder that tasted good.
It was the best wine I ever had. And but what the customers said, you're too hard to do business with. You need a better website. You need a mobile app. You need delivery. And this is 5 years ago. And so the owners wanted me to be their IT guy. And it's like, I'd love to, but I'll never write this book if I become your IT guy. And I'm desperately want to write the book because I want to help people at scale. And I can't do that, mentoring 1 or 2 people a year. And so I said, I'll find somebody. And a woman who worked for me at Accenture left the firm because she didn't want to travel. I get it. Went to work for Dell. And she actually in the late 90s built Dell.com. And so e-commerce at scale, she convinced Michael, the owner, Michael Dell, to not have pick lists for geeks in the basement, but actually have product on the website. And she was with them for 15 years. And they went private. So she left the company and did work for a medical marijuana firm in Canada. So she knows controlled substance over the web. Who else is more qualified? She's more qualified than I am. And she's brilliant. I said, there's only one problem with her. She went to OU. So other than that, she's the best. And so within 3 months, she found a white label mobile app and website for the retail liquor industry. Well, that's important because there are 25,000 things in a store. You can't physically take pictures and load them up onto a website. You have to have feeds from the distributors. And this company built that. She skinned it with their branding. And within 3 months, she had 40 stores up and running.
Wow.
The pandemic hit. And all of a sudden they had a different channel to sell to their customers. And every 2 weeks through the pandemic, I would test it to make sure it worked and have my booze delivered all through the pandemic. It was awesome. But the other thing is a lot of work their central IT were doing, we just outsourced to the cloud, email to the cloud, backup to the cloud, store support outsourced. So they were just focused on the strategic part of IT. But they had a strategy. And that's kind of the dirty little secret I talk about in the book, that a lot of organizations don't have a strategy. It's crazy. And, if you don't know where you're headed, it's kind of hard to have your IT follow.
No kidding.
Yeah. That's pushing the noodle uphill, and you're not sure you're on the right hill that you're pushing that noodle up, right?
That's right.
Man, I learned a lot, and I'm looking at my notes, and just I think it's going to go back to the point I want to reemphasize, and it's that communication with your clients, customers, team, supervisors, boards builds trust.
Yep.
And you got to have trust to succeed, because otherwise you think you might have autonomy, but somebody's going to smack your hand as soon as you reach out for that lever next time. So
I found myself in the manuscript using two phrases. One is use your words. You know, if you want something, use your words.
Yep.
Just
And the
like
other
your
is
3-year-old, right?
it worked for my boys when they were 5 and 3. And then the others are not mind readers. Your direct reports can't read your mind. They don't know what your expectations are unless you use your words. Your boss, what are they trying to achieve? How can you help them? Your customers. You don't have to meet with all your customers, but your best customers. You get out there and talk with them. And but yeah, I found people sometimes they're scared or they don't have the courage to use their words. And
Yeah. Yeah. Cam, how about you? What'd you learn?
Yeah, for me, I think just reiterating the importance of translating the technical terms. I've been sitting here trying to think of who I heard this from, or if it was from a guest on the show or another podcast or what. But the idea that it's like, if you're an expert and you can't translate, then you're not a very good expert. And this idea of it's like, if you don't understand things enough that you can summarize them short, that you can translate it to somebody who doesn't know anything about IT, then you're probably not as good of an expert as you think you are. But yeah, just the importance of being able to translate stuff is really key, I think.
I bet that was Dr. Quello. He may not have coined it, but I could see Dr. Quello saying that.
I can see that, yeah.
Yeah. Brad, how about you? What'd you learn?
well, I learned to stay away from Colorado during May snowstorms.
There you go.
I will never be there in May.
No, sir. Not the right time.
You gotta wait all the way to June to be safe. I mean, yeah, that's no
And
doubt.
then those gully washers show up, and you don't really want that either.
Yeah. So, Brad, how do folks find you, buy your book, learn more about what you got going on?
On LinkedIn, I have a website, bradenglert.com. I'm going to create a customized link for your podcast. I'll email it to you after this, and it'll give access to a free sampling of the book. It'll give access to where to buy the book, and it'll provide my schedule if you want to have some time to talk.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, and thank you for your time today, Brad.
You bet. I enjoyed it.
Camden, run us out.
All right. Thank you all for listening to today's episode of 10X Your Team with Cam and Otis. And a special thanks to our guest, Brad Englert, for joining us today. Remember, you can watch full episodes of the show on YouTube at 10X Your Team. If you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure to pass it along to other lifelong learners in your tribe so that they can enjoy it too. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. As always, the full archive of episodes is available at www.10xyourteam.net. Thanks again, and we'll see you all next time.